Hoyoverse for the better part of 5 years has been the face of gacha, the single entity everyone thinks of when the word gacha gaming comes up, and for good reason. 5 years ago in 2020, one of the greatest gacha games ever made was released, Genshin Impact. And to say this game popped off would honestly be an understatement. This game was a phenomenon, and I mean that literally. It wasn't just popular, it was explosive, it was everywhere, and it immediately became a standard setter. It was the first, and really still is, Hoyoverse's biggest source of income. And beyond that, it was the first gacha game that truly set a blueprint for how every other gacha game going forward would look and feel, visually, mechanically, structurally, all of it. And really, through Genshin Impact and all the subsequent Hoyoverse titles that came after, everyone in the gacha community, and honestly everyone on earth, saw solid proof of Hoyoverse's success. We saw it in the revenue charts that we constantly talk about, charts that always have at least one Hoyoverse game sitting at the top. We saw it in the advertising, in the shared visibility, and in the massive shared player base climbing into the tens of millions. But one thing, more than every other sign, more than every single proof of Hoyoverse's success, was its impact on the Game Awards. See, ever since Hoyoverse's rise to fame with Genshin Impact in 2020, every single subsequent Game Awards show always had at least one Hoyoverse title nominated for Best Mobile Game, without exception. Whether it was Genshin Impact, Honkai Star, or Zenless Zone Zero, there would always be at least one Hoyoverse game in that category. And more times than not, it was always that Hoyoverse game that ended up taking up the trophy for Best Mobile Game. And really, this always served as a reminder, not just to us in the gacha community, but to everyone watching around the world, of Hoyoverse's prominence. And not only his prominence as a gacha game developer, but really his prominence as a video game developer overall. But this year, the year of our Lord and Savior 2025, there's been a very noticeable change, because for the first time in gacha history, since Hoyoverse's reign in the gaming space, there is no Hoyoverse game included in the nominations for Best Mobile Game of the Year. Not a single one. And this is very important, because for 4 years, Hoyoverse practically owned that category in the Game Awards. So the fact that it is not so much as nominated now shows an obvious decline. So the big question is why? Why now of all times? Why now, after 5 years of dominance and prominence in the gacha space, are we suddenly seeing signs of a decline? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. So if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about the entire situation with the Game Awards. Do you think this means anything? Do you think this has any real significance? Or do you, like me, believe that this is the first of many signs that Hoyoverse doesn't quite have as much power, doesn't have quite as much prominence as it always has? Tell me that and more in the comments below, and of course don't forget to subscribe and click on any of my future videos. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by U7Buy. When you're looking for a cheap, safe, and trusted digital marketplace for all things gacha, U7Buy is the best choice. U7Buy offers unbeatable pricing for top-ups in your favorite gacha, up to 25% off, and still 10 to 15% cheaper than official platforms. And here's how easy it is to top up. Simply enter your account UID and server, and your top-up will be processed instantly. Join over 100 million satisfied customers worldwide, and check out the 30,000 plus positive reviews on Testpilot. So the question is, do you want the best deals for your in-game top-ups? Then simply click the links in the description or pinned comments below to save even more. And here is where you can save extra. When you're checking out, simply enter my code TNP to save an extra 5% on already low prices. U7Buy, your gateway to the best gaming top-up deals, fast delivery, and unbeatable prices. So thank you U7Buy for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into it. See, the topic of Hoyoverse's decline is something that has been a massive subject of conversation, especially very recently. I mean, just between 2024 and 2025 alone, there's been a major shift in how people view this company. Where before, any criticism whatsoever of Hoyoverse resulted in immense hate toward the person criticizing, and equally immense defense of Hoyoverse, the tone has changed completely in recent times. Now, criticism is everywhere. And really, what makes this shift more noticeable is that creators who were once known for supporting Hoyoverse, people who built their entire channels around praising their games, are now openly speaking against them.
The cons kind of outweigh the pros a little bit, especially with the skin monetization. I'm just not a fan of it.
Yeah, didn't play it, didn't want to play it.
Predatory gacha game monetization tactics tier list. This is probably going to start with Hoyo, I would assume.
Hoyo is not your friend.
There is this growing feeling across the gacha community that the veil is finally lifting, and people are beginning to see Hoyoverse for what it truly is. So the big question is, what is Hoyoverse really? And to answer this question, we have to talk about a certain prominent content creator, Tectone. All roads lead back to Tectone, and for good reason. Tectone was the first content creator to actually see through Hoyoverse.
You know what's crazy? I knew that. I found this out yesterday. It really is that fucking bad. They legit lied.
See, back in 2021, when Genshin Impact was at its peak and the entire community was in that honeymoon phase, where it felt like the game could do no wrong, everyone was caught in the hype. Everyone, that is, except Tectone. He was one of the few prominent voices who saw through the illusions and called them out. And at that time, this was arguably the worst thing he could have done. Criticizing Genshin Impact in that period was highly risky. The type of risk capable of hurting your career and social image. And in Tectone's case, it did. But the reality is, he was right. Every single complaint we see today about about Genshin Impact, every video you've watched by creators pointing out issues is something Tech2 had already called out years ago. Just several months to a year after Genshin's release, he was already highlighting the problems, which says a lot about both Genshin Impact and Hoyoverse as a whole. See, right now, many believe that Hoyoverse is facing a decline, and the fact that none of their games were nominated for Best Mobile Games is one of the biggest evidence of that decline. But if we were to look at everything Tech2 observed and said during Genshin Impact's earlier days, it paints a different picture, specifically as to the actual time this decline started. It proves that what we see now as a decline is not entirely new. These issues existed even at the height of their success. Hoyoverse had always been facing a decline even at their absolute peak. But that doesn't make sense now, does it? I mean, if Hoyoverse had been in decline, especially for that long, then how has it managed to stay at the top for the better part of 5 years? Well, I believe there are two major reasons for this: circumstance and monopoly. See, when I look at Hoyoverse games, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero, you begin to understand why it's no surprising that these titles reach the top. These are phenomenal games brimming with potential, from the stories to the characters to the gameplay and everything in between. It is easy to see how these games manage to hook so many players in such a short amount of time. So yes, the quality of Hoyoverse's game contributed significantly to its success, but the reality is that what contributed even more to turning Hoyoverse into a multi-million, now billion-dollar company were its circumstance and monopoly. Genshin Impact, Hoyoverse's biggest game, was released at the height of one of the most unusual years in recent history, COVID-19. A year that, as we all know, was devastating for the average person. The virus itself claimed countless lives, and endless curfews created crushing boredom for millions. But at the same time, COVID was arguably the best year for business owners. Virtually every business who took advantage of that circumstance experienced a boom. It was a phenomenal time if you were building a company, and Hoyoverse happened to hit that moment perfectly. The circumstances surrounding Genshin Impact's release gave it that initial boom, and as strong as the game's quality was, what sustained Hoyoverse over the following years was even more so its monopoly over the entire gacha community. Hoyoverse was realistically the single truly dominant force in gacha gaming. There were no other games delivering on the same level of excitement, the same level of polish, or the same scale of engagement. It even reached a point where, when Hoyoverse released his next major title, Honkai Star Rail, the community began comparing it directly to Genshin Impact. Two games from the same company, both generating revenue for the same pockets, yet Hoyoverse's grip on the gacha community was so strong that people couldn't help but do the illogical: pit one Hoyoverse game against another and debate which was better. And really, understanding that makes what is happening at the Game Awards this year much clearer. Now in 2025, as we await the awards, no Hoyoverse game is nominated. And in the space where a Hoyoverse title once would have been, another game has taken its place, Wuthering Waves. And yes, we've all sung the praises of Wuthering Waves. It is no surprise that this game holds a nomination for Best Mobile Game. And it will be no surprise if Wuthering Waves actually wins that title, because Wuthering Waves has repeatedly proven itself as a game capable of pushing boundaries, and the Venezita update is a testament to that. But more importantly, the presence of Wuthering Waves as a nominee signals a paradigm shift. It officially dismantles the monopoly Hoyoverse has long held over the gacha community. Wuthering Waves being there is proof that Hoyoverse no longer dominates this space the way it once did. And this comes as no surprise at all. I've said this before in previous videos. Wuthering Waves revealed the decline in Hoyoverse that had long been hidden, a decline that only a few had noticed up to now. Wuthering Waves made it visible to everyone. In Wuthering Waves, players saw a different side of gacha, an objectively better side, whether in gameplay, community engagement, developer feedback, really nearly every other aspect. Wuthering Waves showcased what gacha gaming could be at its best. And the reaction is clear. Evidence is everywhere. More and more content creators are leaving Hoyoverse games to cover Wuthering Waves. Entire parts of the community, people who used to devote all their time to Hoyoverse titles, are abandoning them to play Wuthering Waves instead. And all this reflects a fundamental paradigm shift in the gacha space. Right now, we might only be seeing the results of that paradigm shift in the Game Awards, but the reality is, if Hoyoverse continues to operate the way it has always done, if it assumes that treating its community the way it always has will be enough to survive, we're going to see its decline become much more visible. As more games enter the gacha community, games like Ananta, Silver Palace, and others of similar quality to Genshin Impact, Hoyoverse's dominance will continue to erode, and this decline won't just show in the awards. It will become apparent across every aspect of the gacha community. But that is just my take. What about you? What do you think about Hoyoverse not being nominated for the Games Award at all? Do you see it as the major shift I do, or do you think it means nothing? And do you also believe that there's a paradigm shift happening in the gacha community, that Genshin Impact is losing its old? Share your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, I'll catch you on the next one.